Okay, so let's get started with how to solve some of the problems that you have for homework number 2. Now you'll notice that for homework number 2 I provided you with the actual problems or the assignment itself, which is the one that is on the left side of my screen, and it's got the data and it's got some of the questions that you basically need to answer. And on the right side of my screen you will notice that I've got the review exercise examples, and they're pretty much similar to the problem that you need to solve. Now, this assignment requires you to solve the problems, but to also show the work that you do. I need to be able to see the calculations that you do, and that's actually listed right over here. It says, to receive credit for the assignment, you must show how you got the answers. Do not simply list your answers, or you will not receive credit for the question. To receive full credit, you need to list your steps and get the correct answer. So there are two parts to solving the homework assignment. So it is not sufficient to only put in an answer. I need to see how you got to that answer. And the way that I would recommend that you solve some of these problems is to actually have your assignments open the way that I have my screen right now. So have your review examples on the right and then your problems on the left. And in the first problem, you're basically presented with a recipe. You've got a pasta chicken alfredo that serves 25 people, and each portion is about 12 ounces. And the total recipe amount is 12 pounds for the chicken, the sauce is 64 ounces, and the pasta is 48 ounces. The first thing that I would like for you to do, and you should get into the habit of doing this really for all of your problems, either for homework 2 or in future for the menu engineering type of assignment. If you ever have any unit of measure that is in ounces and the rest of it might be in pounds or vice versa, you need to make sure that you try to convert the pounds into ounces just to make it easier later on to calculate any numbers that you may need to. Now, in order to calculate, to convert your pounds into ounces, you need to multiply this by 16. Alright, and that is going to convert the chicken from pounds into ounces, and 12 pounds times 16 will give you 192 ounces. This will prevent any calculation errors later on when you are working with the problem, when you're working with the assignment. Alright, now we've also got some other data here. We've got the AP cost for the chicken, which is the as purchased cost of the chicken, $71, and the yield is 98%. Now, you probably already read what the definition of yield is in your textbook, but I'll go over it very briefly. Yield is basically what is left over from a chicken that you purchase after you have processed it, which means after you've removed any excess skin and fat, and if you've trimmed some of the bone or removed some of the bone, and after you've produced the chicken, after you've cooked it, you're probably going to experience some weight shrinkage in the chicken. So whatever you pay for at the store is not really what ends up on the plate, because a whole part of that actually is going to go towards waste. Now, the EP cost for the sauce, or the edible portion cost for the sauce, is $14.08, and then you got the EP cost for the pasta as $16.80. Now, your first problem is to calculate the EP cost for the chicken. So we've got the cost for the pasta and the sauce. Now we need to figure out what the edible portion cost for the chicken is. And the way to solve this problem is you would go to your review or to your examples that I provided and just copy the formula from your example. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to stick it over here. And now all you need to do is basically plug in the numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and post the formula again. And what I will do is plug in the data that I have. So we know that the AP price for the chicken is going to be $71 because that is listed above. So I'm going to write $71. And we know that the yield percentage is going to be 98%. Now, 98% represented as a decimal, because you cannot divide 71 directly over percentage, so you need to convert to a decimal. So you're going to convert this to a decimal. So you will take 98% divided by 100, and that's going to give you 0.98. So The next step is to do the actual calculation. So 71 divided by 98 will give us a new EP cost of $72.44. So this is how you solve the first part of it. Now, I am not going to go through the rest of homework 2 unless someone indicates that they have a specific question in mind that they would like to go over. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through the process of how to start solving homework number 2. You've already got an example on the right. Copy the formula, paste it into the actual assignment sheet, and then start plugging in the numbers. And once again, do not forget to convert any pounds into ounces. Now, I don't have any questions at the moment from any of the students, so I'm going to move on to problem or assignment number 3. Now, for problem number 3, you also notice that I provided you with a sample case study, which is very similar to the homework assignment that you need to complete. My recommendation for you is to do the following. Copy the formulas that I provided on your sample sheet over to the actual homework assignment and go ahead and paste them underneath it and then do the calculation as is. Now, if you are familiar with Excel and you know how to import formulas, you can go ahead and put in the formulas next to each one of these answers. So what I did was I created a column called answers, which is what you have in front of you, also on your assignment, and I plugged in the formula. And the formula to calculate the food cost percentage is food cost, as we see over here. So food cost divided by food sales times 100. So what I did was I programmed that particular cell to take the value of column B, cell number 15, which is the food cost right there. So this is B15. You'll see it's indicator right over here as well. So B15, which is food cost divided by food sales, and food sales is also food revenue right here, which is B10, which is why this says over here B15 divided by B10. So I'm dividing the cost over the sales, multiplying it by 100, and that gives me 32%. So that is the way that would probably be the easiest way to solve problem number 3 or homework 3. Another thing that you can do if you wanted to is to simply use the sample sheet. Since it already has all of the formulas, what I would do is I would probably just delete all of these numbers right there like that. And once I've deleted all of them, what you can do is you could also start going and clearing out this column right here. Or actually, you know what, you could just leave that. These are already pre-programmed with the formulas. So what you could do is you could take the sample assignment sheet and delete all of the data that is currently under the formulas, and then just change the values that you have right over here. So the food revenue, the beverage revenue, take out the data from the sample assignment, and what you can do is just take the values that we have here from the actual homework assignment. So I would copy these two, the food revenue and beverage revenue, and I would move them over to the sample and put them right here and paste them over here. Now the total food cost is basically the total of these two amounts over here, total cost of sales, sorry. I'm going to use a formula. I'm going to use sigma, which is located right over here. So the sigma sign indicates the sum or total or the addition of all of the values that are in this cell and that cell. And then we're going to go to operating expenses and do the same thing. Copy all of these numbers and paste them here. Now you'll notice that in the homework assignment there's operating expenses, and I'm listing all of the operating expenses right over here, but when you go back to the sample assignment, you'll notice that there is a row called variable cost, and the variable cost is something that I added because I know that later on I'm going to need to use it right here when trying to calculate the variable cost per guest. Your variable costs are basically any costs that change. that are not constant. Things that do not change are things like your mortgage, your property taxes, your insurance, your interest, and your depreciation. But if you notice, all of these operating expenses, all of these pretty much change depending on the level of business that we have. So your payroll will change based on how many employees you're scheduling. So on busy days, you'll probably have more employees, and on slow days, you might have less employees. So that payroll will change. Same thing with the benefits, it changes accordingly, and music entertainment, depending on whether or not you hire people to DJ for you on the weekends or not. So all of these expenses right here change based on the level of business that you have. So the variable cost is basically the total for this column right there. And then you've got the fixed costs, mortgage payable, property taxes, insurance. All of these do not change. They're always the same. So every month you're going to pay the exact same amount. So I'm going to take all of my fixed costs, copy them over to my sample sheet, and plug them in. And then I will add up those costs. And then my total operating expenses. Your total operating expenses are basically all of these expenses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the total variable costs plus total fixed costs. So once again, operating expenses are total variable costs and total fixed costs. I take a mistake. I want to apologize. There's one additional item that I did not include. Your variable cost includes all of these, but there's also one more variable cost that I forgot to include, and that is the cost of food. Because your food changes based on how much you sell. So I need to go ahead and include that as well into the variable cost. Alright, so to calculate the variable cost, what we're going to do is I'm going to click on the sigma sign right there, and I want to add all of my total cost of sales plus all of these right here, my variable costs, in order to get the total variable cost. So that is a correct variable cost right there. Okay, so it needs to be all of these right here in addition to the cost of sales. Alright, now our total operating expenses should be the total of this amount and that amount right there. So 176,968 plus 21,634. So let's go ahead and add up those two amounts. So this should be our new total operating costs. Now our profit before taxes, should basically be our total revenue minus all of our costs and expenses. So what we want to do is we want to basically take our total revenue. So I'm going to say that cell B34, cell B34 equals the total revenue, so $488,560 minus our total operating expenses, which is that right there. So this is what our profit is before taxes. Okay, that amount right there. Alright, so once you have copied all of these numbers from your assignment sheet, which is right here. So once you've copied all of these numbers, now what you need to do is just go ahead and follow the formulas that are listed here to get to these answers. Now if you're using the sample assignment that I gave you, these numbers should be changing automatically for you, but what I want you to do is I do want you to go ahead and enter the actual numbers. So you need to type them in. So you're going to need to do a open bracket, you're going to do equal and the food cost, because I want to see how you got to that answer. So the food cost would be $102,580 divided by the food sales, which is $320,560 times 100. So I do want you to enter in the data. Don't just rely on the formulas that are here. And then what I want you to do is go ahead and put this into your calculator and make sure that the answer that is here correct, because there might be an error in this formula. So do not assume that the formulas are always correct. Yes, even I make mistakes, and that is normal. None of us are infallible. All right. So please make sure that you go ahead and you type in the numbers and that you check your formulas to make sure that the answers are correct. All right. Seeing that there are no questions as of yet, I am going to move on to the next assignment. So we just completed or gone through homeworks 2 and 3 very briefly. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now, homework number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. I've given you directions on how to solve them, and I've even done the first one for you. But let's go ahead and do this together. All right, so for Chapter 5, homework number 4, you're required to basically come up with selling prices for menu items using several pricing methods. You're going to be doing the factor method, the markup on cost method, the gross markup factor method, and the TRA method. And the TRA stands for Texas Restaurant Association, because they're the ones that developed that formula. Now, in this particular example, it basically says that you need to divide 100 by the desired food cost percentage and multiply, and that basically would create your what's called the factor, which is that amount listed right over there, 3.57. And then what you need to do is you need to take your factor and multiply the factor by the cost of the meal. So this would be the ingredient cost, or the cost of the food before you actually sell it. All right. Now, 100 divided by 28. So what you want to do is basically, open up your calculator. So I'm going to open up my calculator and I'm going to type in 100. Now, the 100 represents 100%. So you can either type in 100 divided by 28, or you could do 1 divided by 0.28, which is represented as a decimal. But let's go ahead and start with the 100 divided by 28%, and I'm getting the 28% from right here. And the answer is going to be 3.757. Once again, 3.57. So this is my factor. This is my factor, which is what I'm listing here. The next thing I need to do is take the 3.57, so 3.57, and multiply it according to this formula by the cost, which is 0.60, which is 60 cents. So I'm going to multiply this by 0.60, or just 0.6 is sufficient. So now I get my selling price of $2.14. You want to round up to 2 decimal places because we are dealing with money, and our monetary system here in the United States is based on a 2 decimal system. So we've only got 2 digits after the point right there, after the dollars. So you're going to use the same formula or method for the burger cost and the pork chop for the factor method. Alright, let's go on to the markup on cost method. This is a one-step calculation that is very similar to the factor method. Now, for the markup on cost method, the formula is determine your desired food cost percentage. And although I say determine, you're always going to get the desired food cost percentage in these problems. I will give it to you. Alright, so for the first one is you need to figure out what your desired food cost percentage, so it is 45%. And the second step is to divide the cost, which is right here, the cost of the meal, $1.20, by the desired food cost percentage represented as a decimal. So let's go ahead and do this together. Alright, so divide the cost by the percentage. So the cost is $1.20 for the steak. We want to divide the steak cost by the desired food cost percentage. Now, you want to divide it by the percentage as a decimal. 45% represented as a decimal is 0.45. So when I divide $1.20 over 0.45, I get a selling price of $2.67. So you're going to go here and do $2.67. So this is how you solve basically the markup on cost method. Very simple. So all you did was basically take that number and you divided it by the 45% represented as a decimal, it would look actually something like that. Okay? So you'll do the same thing for the rest of them. Take that number, divide it by this as a decimal to get the selling price. Alright, let's move on to the gross markup factor method. Now, this particular method is interesting because you typically cannot really use it in a restaurant unless you've got some data with regards to how many customers you've served. So this is a good method to use if you already know how many people that you're serving, and you would get that. And you also need to know what your gross profit is, and you would only be able to get your gross profit if you've ran your restaurant for a while and you've got a income statement or a statement of income. Some people like to call it a profit and loss statement. So this is when you'd be able to use this a little bit more effectively. Now if we take this particular formula, I'm just going to read through the directions. It says take your gross profit from your income statement, determine the number of customers served for that particular period basically. So if your gross profit is $10,000, you need to figure out, well, how many people did you serve in your restaurant to generate the 10,000? In this particular example, you served 2,500 people. All right, and you would find that information from the number of ticket sales that you have, or by collecting data through your POS system. Now, once you determine the number of customers served, you need to divide the gross profit by the number of customers, and the result is called your cost per customer. Then you need to add your cost per customer to the cost of your meal to get your selling price. So let's go ahead and do this together. And if I'm not mistaken, I did provide you with an example of this as well. Alright, so for this particular example, what we're going to do is we are going to take our gross profit, which is $10,000, and we are going to divide it by the number of customers that we had. So 2,500 people were served. And then whatever the answer is from that amount is going to get added to our cost per meal. So which in this particular case, the meal is a hamburger and the cost for producing the hamburger is 23 cents. It seems pretty low, but yes, that is not uncommon, especially for restaurants that sell fast food or that sell I would have to say convenience foods. Usually the cost is very low. Alright, so when you take 10,000 and divide it by 2,500 customers, we get a cost per customer of $4. So what you want to do is you want to take the cost per customer and add it to the cost per meal, which is the hamburger cost. So that would give us a selling price of $4.23. So this is how you would solve the gross markup on factor problem. And you would need to do the same process for the other two examples as well. Alright, let's go on to the TRA method, which is a Texas Restaurant Association method. I will do the first one and allow you guys to do the other two on your own. Now, for the Texas Restaurant Association method, the method is actually very simple. The first thing that you would need to do is read the instructions. From your income statement, take your labor cost in percent, operating cost in percent, both controllable and non-controllable. Controllable is really another word for fixed and non-fixed or variable costs. So you want to take all of your expenses, and also you need to dictate what you want your profit to be in percent. Now, the thing about the TRA method is that you can only use it for, once again, a restaurant that has been in operation for a while, because you need to have an income statement with data. The great thing about using the TRA method is that when you use this method, it's going to allow you to come up with selling prices for each of your menu items, and the price that you come up with, you're going to be very certain that the price is going to be sufficient to cover your meal cost, your labor cost, your operating cost, all of your expenses, and generate the type of profit that you are looking for or that you are targeting in your restaurant. So what you want to do is I will be providing you with some data. So I'm giving you the meal cost right over here. So this particular meal is $1.23. And I'm giving you a very, very abbreviated version of an income statement and expenses. Usually you're going to find a lot more expenses, but for the sake of this assignment, I'm only using 2. So we're using labor cost of 30%, and the labor cost is 30% of your total sales. 30% of your total sales in your restaurant. And then we're going to use the operating cost, and I'm just lumping all of my costs together as operating costs. Alright, so what you need to do now is you need to convert really all of the percentages into decimals. So one thing you can do is you can go over here and you can basically add a decimal to all of these right there. Or you could divide 30 by 100, and that's going to give you 0.3. Remove the percentages. And now what you want to do is you want to add up all of these together. So you want to add the 0.3 plus 0.3 plus 0.03. So you want to add these 3 numbers together. So that is the first thing that you want to do. All right. So if you take 30% for the labor cost plus 30% for the operating cost plus your desired profit percent, which is 3%, and you add them up all together, you're going to get a total of 63%. Okay, that is your total. All right, so that is the first step, step 1. So first you need to add all of your cost percentages as a decimal. Once you get your cost percentage as a decimal, what you need to do is you want to calculate something called the divisor. Now to calculate the divisor, what you need to do is you need to subtract that number right there, the 0.63, from 1. So you're going to take 1 minus 0.63. Alright? So 1 minus 0.63 is going to give us 37. It's going to give us 37. Okay, it's going to give us 37. Now, once we've got the 37, what do we need to do? This is called your divisor. Now what you need to do is you need to take your meal cost, which is right here, and you want to divide this by the divisor, which is, so meal cost divided by divisor. So $1.23 divided by 0.37 to get your selling price. So I'm going to take $1.23 divided by 0.37, and that is going to give me a estimated selling price of about $3.32. So this is how you basically solve that particular problem using the TRA method. First, convert all of your percentages into decimals. Then you want to add them all up. Then you want to take the answer and subtract it from 1 to get a divisor. Now, if you're wondering what the heck a divisor is, your divisor is basically your desired food cost percentage. By subtracting all of your expenses and desired profit from 1, you're basically saying that you want to make sure that all of your cost and your profit margins and all of that does not exceed 63% of your total sales, which means that your food cost is going to be 37%. So when we take $1.23 and divide it by a desired food cost of 37%, we get a selling price of $3.32. Now, this may seem like a very low number, but the beauty of using that particular number is that we know that if we were to sell this particular meal for $3.32, the $3.32 will pay for labor, it will pay for the operating costs, it will generate at least 3% profit for the owners. Now, if you think 3% is too low, you're more than welcome to go ahead and increase that in the real world. But for this particular problem, you need to use the numbers that I provided. Alright, so that was homework number 4. Now we're going to move on to homework number 5. Okay, in homework number 5, the instructions are: using the following information provided below, calculate the product sales mix, SM, for each item. Secondly, you need to calculate the contribution margin, CM, for each item. And then you need to create a engineering table and identify which items are considered stars, puzzles, plow horses, or dogs. The easy part of this is to actually complete the sales mix and the contribution margin. Now, in order for you to calculate the sales mix, the first thing that you would need to do is you would need to go ahead and add up all of the items that you sold. So you would need to add up all of these items right here. So all of the meals sold. So 170 plus 450 plus 350 plus 380 plus 80, and come up with a total over here. So that is the first thing that you need to do. Once you add up all of these numbers, you will notice that the total is $1,430. I'm sorry, 1,430 meals sold. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the total over here. The next thing that you need to do to calculate to calculate the sales mix is you need to take each one of these items and divide it by that total amount to get the sales mix. So cordon bleu is 170 divided by 1430, and that should give us the sales mix of approximately 11.89%. To calculate the contribution margin, all you have to do is take the selling price and subtract it from the cost. So I'm just going to put a minus sign right there, and take 595 minus 210, and the contribution margin for that particular amount is going to be $3.85. And we can go ahead and delete these extra lines over here. So that's how you basically calculate the sales mix and the contribution margin. Once again, take the menu item divided by the total sold to get the times 100 to get the sales mix, and then the contribution margin is selling price minus the cost to get the contribution margin. Contribution margin is also known as a gross profit. So you'll do the same thing for all of these items over here. The next part is, once you've calculated all of these amounts, you basically need to plug in these numbers into the Excel sheet that I provided you, and I would refer you to the video that I did on completing the menu engineering assignment, as opposed to doing it again here through the webinar, since I don't have any particular questions about that. But if you do have any questions about the assignment, feel free to email me. I would be more than happy to answer any questions. Also, I am available to chat online with you through Skype if you're available to do that. I don't have any specific hours, so if you do need to chat with me in person, we could do it through Skype or through Google Hangouts. I hope this helps you figure out how to solve all of the problems, and I look forward to seeing your assignments.